Hello everyone. Today we are going to be going over 1.4, subtracting integers. Our essential question is how are adding integers and subtracting integers related? And then your question on the left-hand margin is when do I subtract integers? So you subtract integers, you remember from 1.3, whenever you have different signs. So the rule would be different signs subtract. To subtract an integer is the same as adding its opposite. So what that means is 3 minus 4 is the same as 3 plus a negative 4, which equals negative 1. So before we move on, let's look at this example. Right? There's a couple different ways that we can do this, and a couple different things that I want you all to get used to when we are subtracting. So I want us to go ahead and let's start looking at the signs of each number. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this piece right here. I'm going to write 3 minus 4. Okay, I want to look at this 3 right here. So this 3, I don't see any minus in front of it, so I know it is a positive. Next, we're going to look at the following number. This minus 4 is associated with that 4 right there. This minus makes this 4 a negative. So this is a positive 3 and a negative 4. So if I have 3 positives, I'm going to go ahead and write those down. 1, 2, 3. These are 3 positives, which is why it's in blue. Now I'm going to use red for my 4 negatives. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Remember, whenever a plus and a minus cancel each other out, they are opposites. So we're going to cancel these out and see how much we have left. So these cancel, these cancel, these cancel, and I am left with 1 negative. So my answer is a negative 1, which is what they showed us right here. Now, when you all are in elementary school, they teach you all that 0 is the smallest number. That's not true. We have a whole world of negatives. So, if I ask you, if you have 3, take away 4, a lot of you are going to tell me you can't do that because that's what you learned in elementary school. Well, that's not in fact true. And I'm going to show you all why. So, here's my number line. There's my 0. Let's choose a different color. 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to choose a different color for my negatives. So the first number that's smaller than 0, whole numbers, negative 1, negative 2, and negative 3. So if I'm starting at, we're starting at 3, I'm going to go ahead and take away 4. And when you subtract, you go to the left on a number line. Subtracting, decreasing would be going to the left. So we're going to start at 3, and we're going to go to the left 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as you can see, we are ending up at our negative 1. So 3 minus 4 actually gives us a negative 1. So that's another way. If you would like to be drawing, right, your number line. Okay, so now that we know that, remember when different signs you're going to subtract and you are keeping the sign of the bigger number. Let's go ahead and try some practice problems. So the first one is 22, negative 22 plus 7, 19 plus a negative 13, and 13 plus a negative 22. Okay, so let's take a look at our number 1. So I'm going to label each of these. This first is a negative, and this 7 is a positive. Because these are different signs, I'm going to subtract. And we're going to actually keep the sign of the bigger number. So the bigger number is 22, and 22 is a negative, so that means my answer has to be a negative. Well, now let's just do 22 minus 7. Carry the 1. 12 minus 7 is 5. And bring the 1 down, so negative 15 is your answer for number 1. All right, now that we know that, let's go ahead and do the same thing for number 2. Now again, even though this was a plus sign here, look at what we did. We subtracted. That's because this addition does not mean that you're adding in this problem. This is the sign of the 7, right? So this is a positive 7, and this is a negative 22. Because they are different signs, we subtracted. So before we do anything with number 2, let's find the signs of each of these to figure out if we are adding or subtracting. Okay, so this 19, well, I don't see a positive or a minus in front of it, but when there's nothing, we know that it's a positive. Plus negative 13. Okay, this plus isn't going to do anything because the negative is the number that's right next to, right, the 13. So this is actually a negative. Well, let's look at this. These are different signs again, so we are going to subtract. This is the same as if I told you what's 19 minus 13. Again, this plus isn't doing anything there. It's just in the way. Well, if I subtract 19 minus 13, I get 6. 19 is the bigger number, and 19 is a positive, so I'm going to keep my positive 6 as my answer. Last one for number 3. Focus on the signs. This is a positive plus a negative 22. So that tells me that this is a negative. Because they are different signs, I'm going to subtract these. So this is really 36 minus 22. 6 minus 2 gives me 4. 3 minus 2 gives me 1. So 14. Keep the sign of the bigger number, which is this one right here. So my answer is a positive 14. Go ahead and take the time if you need to rewind the video and look back to see what I just did. And if you have any questions on it or you need more of an explanation, go ahead and just ask me when you get the chance to, and I can continue to explain it further. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Now, what is keep, change, or what we call it as KCC? Okay, so this is going to be a little bit tricky, but I know that we can get it. So you're only going to do keep, change, or KCC on a subtraction problem. This is very important. We cannot be switching the sign if it is a plus. It has to be a subtraction. So here's an example of a problem. Negative 10 minus, in parentheses, a negative 2. So this is what I mean by a subtraction problem. There is a minus sign in between, right, two numbers. More specifically, I also have two negatives right next to each other, and that's going to cause a problem, and I'm going to show you why. All right. So to subtract, you can add the opposite, which means KCC. So we take this number, negative 10, we keep it the same. This negative, we're going to change it, right? Here's a K for keep, C for change. And then the last C for change is change the signs of this. So let me see if I explain it. All right, so let's look at it in a little bit more detail because I know that was a little fast. Okay, so this keep, change is something that we're going to do whenever we have subtraction problems. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite my problem of negative 10 minus, and then in parentheses, a negative 2. These two negatives actually cancel each other out. And in a bit, I'm going to show you a shortcut. But let's go ahead and let's follow. I see that I have a negative in between, which is a subtraction problem. So I'm going to do KCC for this. So I'm going to draw 3 arrows to each one of these terms. The first one is a K, so we're going to keep this the same. We're going to change this one and change this one. So this is what I mean by keep. Well, the negative 10, you're not going to do anything. It's going to stay a negative 10. You're going to keep it the same. This minus, the subtraction, you're going to change it to its opposite. And the opposite of subtracting is to add. And this term right here, this negative 2, we're going to change the sign of it to a positive 2. So your problem, right, that had a bunch of negatives right here and it looked confusing, is actually negative 10 plus 2. Well, these are different signs, so I'm going to subtract them. I have 10, take away 2, which is an 8. Keep the sign of the bigger number. 10 is the bigger number, and it has a negative, so my answer is a negative 8. If we're still not comfortable doing that yet, we can go ahead and solve this by drawing this problem out. So right here I have 10 negatives. So I'm going to draw 10 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I have 2 positives. So I'm going to go ahead and draw 2 positives. 1, 2. And positive and a negative cancel each other out. If you want to talk about this in terms of money, this would be you have $2 and you want to buy something that costs 10. How much more money do you need to be able to buy this? So I'm going to cancel this out. I'm going to cancel this out because a positive and negative cancel. And I am left with all of these. So we're going to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I am left with 8 negatives. So you need $8 more to buy something that costs $10 when you only have 2. Take your time, pause this, go back if you need to see the steps that I just did. I'm going to show you all a shortcut now. So there is something that says, or a shortcut to this, when you have 2 negatives right next to each other, like these, with no numbers in between, we can actually, in a sense, connect them. And the reason goes back to our multiplication rules, which we haven't talked about yet. But a negative multiplied by negative is going to give us a positive. So a negative cancels out this negative, which is why, in a sense, you can combine them and turn it into a plus. So if I'm going to rewrite this, it's negative 10 plus 2, which is what we had earlier. This is a negative. This is a positive. Subtract them. 10 minus 2 is 8. Keep the sign of the bigger number. Negative 8 is your answer. This parentheses right here, you do not need them. They're actually just really confusing us a little bit. They're really just in the way. So if I was to rewrite my problem, it would be negative 10 minus negative 2. And as you can see now, it's a little bit clearer to see that these two negatives can connect and give us negative 10 plus 2, which is a lot easier than having these two negatives next to each other. It looks a little bit simpler. So we're going to get a lot of practice with this, but this is one of the most important rules that you're going to learn all year. If you have trouble with that at the beginning, that's fine, but we have to improve because this is something that is not going to go away, right? Basic math facts that you're going to use from now on until high school. So we need to know, or college if you keep going past high school, we have to know, right, this and understand this fully. So we're not thrown off anytime we see these problems. Okay, so let's go to next one. Okay, so here are some practice problems associated with this. Some simple, some a little bit different. So let's go ahead and look at these. Well, first this one, all right? 8 minus 3. Okay, yes, it's a subtraction problem, but you've known this, right? You can use your fingers. What's 8 minus 3? I have 8, take away 3, or you have $8, you spend 3, right? This isn't a trick question. It's as easy as it seems. 8 minus 3 is 5. So we're still going to have some simple problems, right? We don't want to make them more confusing. If you see 8 minus 3, then I know it's going to be 5, right? Let's look at number 2 now. Now, 9 minus 17. Okay, this is the part where some of you are going to tell me you can't do that. If you have 9, you cannot take away 17 from 9. I want you all to stop thinking that way. And whenever that thought pops to your head, whenever you think, I can't take away 17 from 9, then I want you to think, well, that must mean my answer is going to be a negative. Okay, because we are learning about negatives now. And again, they do you all a disservice in elementary school trying to teach you that 0 is the smallest number. It is not. So you can, in fact, take 9 away from 17, or 17 away from 9. You can. But you're going to be in the negatives. You're going to be in debt. So let's go ahead and let's try this problem using KCC. So I'm going to go ahead and first draw 3 arrows to each of these terms. If it helps you, you can put a box around each of these. All right, so this 9, we're going to keep it, change, change. Now, this is because it's a subtraction problem. I could have also done this over here, but I know what 8 minus 3 is, so there's no need. The 9, I'm going to keep it the same. Change, so this negative is going to change to a positive, and this positive is going to change to a negative. Okay, so we didn't have to do this in this problem, but it's just something that you could have just taken 9 minus 17. Well, this is a positive. This one right here is a negative. So that must mean I'm subtracting them, which you can do 17 minus 9. You can use your fingers if you need to, or start from 9 and count up to 17. Okay, this is 8. And I'm going to keep the sign of the bigger number. The bigger number is 17, and 17 was a negative. So remember, we knew from the beginning our answer was going to be a negative answer because you all told me or thought that you cannot take 17 away from 9. So because you had that thought, you have to think, well, that must mean my answer has to be negative because we can do this. Okay, let's do one more. Let's do 3 minus 3. Negative 3 minus 3. Okay. So if I don't want to do KCC, I can put a box around both of these. And we're going to determine the sign of this one. So this is a -3. And the sign of this one, this is a -3. They are both the same sign. Remember from last section, because they are the same sign, we are in fact not going to subtract, even though it says subtract right here. That's where a lot of you get thrown off. Same signs are going to actually add. So I have 3 plus 3, well, that gives me 6. And when we add, we have to keep the sign the same. So these two are negatives. Well, then my answer is -6. You want a different explanation for that? Here it goes. Let's do, I have 3 negatives. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I took care of this one. When I look at this box, I have 3 more negatives. 1, 2, 3. Well, nothing is going to cancel out. There's no positives in here. There's just all negatives. So how many negatives do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 negatives. So your answer is -6. The other explanation I can think of would be a number line. So if I was to erase this, we could draw a number line. Let's say that my 0 is over here. That 1, 2, 3, so -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, and -6. Okay, as you know, this side has all my positives. I just need my negatives for right now. We're starting at a -3. So let's go ahead and find our -3 on this number line, which would be right here. And from that -3, I'm going to move 3 spaces to the left because I'm going to subtract 3. And when I subtract 3 on a number line, I am going this way. So do 1, 2, 3. Well, look where I end up. I end up at -6. So all those different ways that we just solved it give us a -6. You can solve it whichever way is more comfortable for you. Okay, let's keep going. So what is a double negative? Well, I just talked about this. This is a shortcut I showed you all. When there are 2 negatives next to each other, you can connect them and draw, essentially just make a plus sign. I already went over that previously, but we can talk about it again. It says there are 2 negatives next to each other with no numbers in between. You can connect the negatives and turn it into a plus sign. So let's do it again since we've already been talking about it. There's no negatives in between here, so I'm going to, or there's no numbers in between these 2 negatives. So I'm going to connect them and make this a plus. If it helps, you can rewrite this as 7 plus 12. You connected the negatives and turned it into a plus, which means they canceled. And now all you have to do is 12 plus 7, because all the negatives are gone. 2 plus 7 is 9. Bring down the 1. Your answer is 19. If you want to know why this works, we haven't talked about these yet, but it's because your multiplication rules that we're going to learn, if you haven't previous years, a negative multiplied by a negative is going to give us a positive. And these two right here are being multiplied. They're right next to each other. And this is in parentheses. So this negative is just being multiplied into this. And because the 2 negatives are multiplied by each other, it gives us a positive. They essentially cancel out and give us a positive. So that is why this works. But we're going to talk more about that. I believe it's next chapter about your multiplication rules. Okay, knowing that, we have just these practice problems and then we are finished. So let's go ahead and let's try these practice problems. Okay. So I can try KCC on all these, or I can try separating these and see if this works. Okay, so this is what I mean by separating. This is a negative 14. This one is a negative 9. All right, well, they're both negatives, so same signs means I'm going to add and keep the sign the same. So let's do 14 plus 9. This gives me a 3. I'll move the 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay, this gives me 23. When I add, I have to keep the sign the same. These are both negatives. Again, if you're not used to this yet, let's think about this. This is 14 negatives. So I could draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then 9 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I did this in the same color because they were both negatives, and count them all together, nothing cancels out, they're all the same. It gives us 23 negatives. So that is my answer for the first one. If negatives doesn't make sense, you can try apples. You have 14 apples, and I give you 9 more apples, right? Well, in total, you have 23 apples. But instead of doing that, we're just doing negatives. Okay, let's try number 5 now. Well, let's try our rule. We have 2 negatives right next to each other. So let's try that shortcut. For that shortcut, zoom it in a bit. It says I can go ahead and combine these and make this a plus. And your new problem is 9 plus 8. Well, it's 9 plus 8. Go ahead and use your fingers if you need to. That gives us 17. Just separate these. Okay, let's try this again for 6. We'll do the same thing. I have a negative times a negative right here. Shortcut says I combine the 2 negatives. I just connect them and make this a plus. I'm going to rewrite this problem. Negative 12 plus 12. Okay, so let's think about this. This right here is a negative. This right here is a positive. These are different. So that means we subtract. Okay, well, if I'm going to subtract these, what's 12 minus 12? 12 minus, well, that's 0. And 0 is not a positive or a negative, it's just 0. Because on a number line, 0 is in the middle. So here's my number line. Perfect in that number line. 0 is right here. All my positive numbers are to the right of 0. And all the negative numbers are to the left of 0. 0 is like the halfway point, right? So 0 is not a positive or a negative, it's just 0. So if you see the numbers that are opposite, negative 12 and positive 12, we're subtracting that's going to give 0 because they're opposite of one another. Okay, what about when we have 3 numbers? Don't let this throw you off. We're still doing the same thing. So if it helps, I would recommend putting a box around each number and its sign. Okay, well, this one, let's use, is a negative. This is a negative. And this is a negative. Look, they're all the same signs. So all we're going to do is our answer has to be negative. You're just going to add all of these. If that still doesn't make sense, let's try different ways of expressing this. This is 9 negatives, right? 9 negatives, so let's go ahead and draw the 9 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, we took care of that one. Now let's do the 16 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Perfect. Took care of that one. Now let's do 8 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, look at all of this right here. These are all negatives. I know I did them different colors, but they're all negatives. They're all minuses. So nothing is going to cancel out. So if you just count all of these, you will get your answer. Now, I could spend time and count every single one of these, or I could have just added these right from the beginning. I could have just added your 9. I know these two right here, 16 plus 9 will give me 25, plus the 8 will give me 33. So your answer should be negative 33. Well, if you're still not sure, you can count all of them. This was 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, and 33. 33 negatives. Again, if negatives don't make sense, I guess you could just say these are 9 apples because it's all the same sign. Oh, this is still the same sign, so this would be apples. And this is still negative, so this would be apples. If one of these is positives, you could say instead of apples, it could be like bananas or something. All right, it doesn't matter. But these were all the same sign. So you have 9 apples, then you get 16 apples, and then you get 8 more apples. How many apples do you have in total? All right, it's just the same way of expressing this. Just remember our answer was negative because all of these were negative. They were the same sign. All 3 numbers were negative. So we just added them and we kept the sign. All right, so that's it for the lesson for today. Your assignments to be on big ideas, so you can go ahead and work on our big ideas problems. Let's go ahead and stop recording. If you need any help, just go ahead and let me know.